Archaeologists have one of the most interesting jobs in the world. Many times have they been excavating a site and discovered something unexpected, leading on to further discoveries that give us an insight into our past. Human history is sketchy at best, and although researchers have done a great job at understanding some of our history, the large majority of it has been lost, leaving us to fill in the gaps. A team of archaeologists were exploring an area in Mexico called a novice when they discovered an ancient cemetery. Inside this cemetery were the remains of strange humans. They were labeled this as the heads of the humans were extremely elongated, something that has been seen in various locations across our planet. The practice of elongating the skull wasn't uncommon during this time. Not only this, but several of these had mutilated teeth. Cristina Garcia Moreno, an archaeologist at Arizona State University, said the following: cranial deformation has been used by different societies in the world as a ritual practice, or for distinction of status within a group, or to distinguish between social groups. The reason why these individuals at El Cemetery deformed their skulls is still unknown. The most common comment I read from people that see the pictures of cranial deformation has been that they think these people are aliens. I could say that some say that as a joke, but the interesting thing is that some do think so. Obviously, we're talking about human beings, not aliens." End quote. The scientific community have said these elongated skulls are due to force being applied, and not because they're aliens in nature as some have suggested. But these comments have received criticism by some who have studied the unknown. Some researchers have put forward the idea that the reason these skulls were made to look like this is because of ancient encounters. These encounters were said to have been with otherworldly life. For years, various civilizations have talked about gods coming from the sky in magnificent creations, and this has in turn caused some to think that the gods they were talking about was actually extraterrestrial life. The scientific world and skeptics, of course, don't believe this theory, and states that it's near impossible that a race would travel vast distances across the universe just to see us. This argument is an interesting one as we are so young in regards to developments ourselves. Although we've achieved a lot within the last 100 years, there's still many things we don't understand about the universe. This is why some researchers have said that religion and paranormal beliefs make sense, because at this moment in time they can't fill in these gaps. Regardless, those who research the unknown have said that many ancient artifacts are littered across our planet, and some of these don't fit in with history. One interesting artifact is that of the Star Child skull, an artifact that has perhaps caused more divide than any other within the UFO community. The Star Child skull was a supposed extraterrestrial skull that was recovered back in 1999, when Lloyd Pye claimed to have come into contact with a young couple from El Paso, Texas in February of that year, of whom were in possession of the extraterrestrial skull. Despite Lloyd receiving and becoming aware of the skull back in 1999, the skull itself did not come into the world of relevancy until late 2003, and these were for reasons not specified. According to the young couple of which Lloyd Pye received the extraterrestrial skull from, the skull itself was claimed to have been uncovered back in 1930 from an old mine tunnel in Mexico. The skull was allegedly found next to a woman, but unfortunately this story cannot be confirmed, and the couple of whom supposedly provided the skull as evidence cannot be found for comment. A problem to which Lloyd claims is nothing more than the couple's wanting to stay anonymous. The skull's sudden popularity in 2003 led to it quickly being the center of attention. This was in the UFO community and for skeptics, of whom agreed to undergo DNA testing of the skull to uncover whether or not it was truly extraterrestrial. The DNA results came back proving not only that the skull was that of a human child, and that the entire stunt pulled was nothing more than a hoax, but that the skull was that of a child of whom had passed away from hydrocephalus, a rare birth defect in which a child experiences a large amount of cranial fluid pressure that causes the skull to bulge outwards, giving it an enlarged appearance. This led to not only the extraterrestrial community being made into a laughingstock, but any other further efforts into DNA testing for additional extraterrestrial claims to be blocked by the scientific establishments that perceive the endeavor as nothing more than a waste of time and resources. However, there is an interesting connection to be made. as well as the main argument for why the Star Child skull and its popularity was nothing more than a stunt, and this was to delegitimize the extraterrestrial community. At the same time that this Star Child skull began making headlines across the planet, a more legitimate discovery was taking place led by lead researchers involved in the promotion of the Disclosure Project, and this was spearheaded by Dr. Stephen Gray. Dr. Stephen Greer had made an incredible discovery that pertained to a strange recovered artifact that was described as being a small humanoid creature that had been mummified and buried in an old church. It was found and then spent time circling black market traders. It was later recovered by alien enthusiasts to undergo DNA testing to prove its legitimacy as an extraterrestrial entity. This strange mummified creature appeared to share many of the same distinct characteristics described in extraterrestrial sightings, with a large head, small mouth, large eyes, and human-like body. But there was only one problem. When measured from the top of its skull to the bottom of its feet, it measured roughly 6 inches tall. In fact, the entire creature could approximately fit in the palm of your hand. Interestingly, there's been various other artifacts that have been discovered, which some say point to other life forms visiting this planet. Scientists and skeptics are not open to these ideas, but government officials have recently been open about the fact that UFOs have been videoed, and that they've even been able to track them. This has only thrown a spanner in the works, and it seems that time will tell whether they will release more videos. So what do you make of these ancient artifacts? Ancient Egypt is a place of wonder. For years people have looked at the Great Pyramids and wondered how ancient man achieved this incredible feat. It's fair to say that the ancient Egyptians were way ahead of their time, being able to create incredible structures that stood up to the test of time, being able to read the constellations to an incredible degree of precision, and create giant monoliths that outweigh some of our biggest modern-day machinery. This ancient society is seen as the cradle of human civilization, and the advancements made by the ancient civilization of Egypt are unmatched. Not only have their developments puzzled and astounded researchers and archaeologists for decades, but every year more and more information comes forth, showing the incredible might and prowess of their ancient culture. It's no wonder that more out there theories have been put forward to try and explain how they did it. Egyptologists and scientists didn't believe that the ancient Egyptians had any help, and that they were gifted enough to have achieved this all on their own. Going back several years ago, an interesting photograph was captured on a live camera that was pointed towards the pyramids. Upon closer inspection, it was noted that a large sphere-like object could be seen hovering above the ground. The object looks to be in almost perfect circle, and doesn't look like it could be a smudge on the camera. Not many people have seen this photograph, and so it's been hard to track down what camera this came from. But the story goes that it was a random live camera that allowed people the time to view the pyramids. One of the first websites to feature the image uploaded it back in 2009, with people being confused about what had been captured. UFO researchers were very happy when this image started to make the rounds online, as for years they've believed that the ancient Egyptians had help when it came to the construction of the pyramids. One UFO researcher said the following about the image. The fascinating thing about UFOs is that they come in all shapes and sizes, and the shaped UFOs often being labeled as the orb or the sphere. Different theories have been presented to explain what the purpose of these objects are, but most who have looked into the phenomenon have said these objects act as a type of drone, scanning areas and flying up close to things as if they're inspecting them. Once they've done this, they can usually be seen making a quick exit. For years, these strange orbs have been witnessed by people across the planet. One of the most interesting accounts of these orbs comes from that of the mysterious skimwalk or range. The family living here started noticing glowing blue balls moving across the property. The balls gave off a cracking sound, seemed intelligently controlled, and could either hover or move unbelievably fast. One evening the family watched as a blue ball approached one of their horses. The light hovered within a few feet of the horse's face, which spooked it immediately. From a distance of 10 feet, they then shined a flashlight on the blue globe and it retreated. It then approached one of the family members as if inspecting them. They described it as a glass ball about the size of a baseball, which appear to contain tubular fluids which intermingled with each other. This is what people think was captured in this image. Staying on the subject of ancient Egypt, Researchers have looked into the accounts of high beings and said that ancient Egypt changed when they claimed to have got assistance from the gods. All throughout Egyptian mythology is a reference to their supposed gods, assisting the early Egyptian civilization by providing vast amounts of untapped knowledge about the universe, as well as providing gifts to humans to assist with further endeavors. One of the biggest pieces of evidence for this intervention pertains to the establishment of the first Egyptian civilization that centered around the creation of agriculture and specialized craft. Many Egyptologists and archaeological researchers believe that prior to the development of large cities, the early Egyptian people lived in scattered and small tribes all throughout the region. This did not change until, strangely enough, there was an introduction of what would come to be the basis of the Egyptian religious practices, which essentially meant that the majority of the breakthroughs in agriculture, urban development, and a unified government did not begin forming until after the Egyptian religion was established, which presumably played a key role in these developments for the early civilization. Interestingly, assistance in agriculture can be found when looking through Egyptian mythologies in reference to gifts provided by their gods, such as that of the domestic cat. According to the Egyptian mythological record, the domestic cat came from the Egyptian gods as a peace offering after the goddess of the sun, Hathor, transformed into segment of which is physically represented by the cat species and went on an unending rampage against humanity. The domesticated cat was supposedly genetically modified by the Egyptian gods, and this was in order to be seen as the most perfect companion for humanity in its times of need. Fortunately enough, it turned out to work perfectly, as the sudden appearance of the domesticated cat allowed agriculture to flourish in ways that had never previously been seen. This was due to the fact that the domesticated cat would eat the vermin that would otherwise spread diseases in a city, ravaged the local crops, and eat stored grains. Scientifically speaking, even more has now been understood about the feline in our modern era, with scientists uncovering that the cat's fur is at a specific frequency of which allows rapid cell growth and healing in both humans and felines in the case of traumatic injury. Interestingly, it's also been found in the archaeological record that the domesticated cat, for reasons completely unknown and not entirely understood, did not appear in the fossil record until the establishment of the Egyptian civilization and a rising in that region, which helps to provide the additional proof necessary to enhance the claim that the Egyptian civilization benefited by their incredible connection with advanced beings they claim to be their gods. So what do you make of this interesting photograph that was captured on a live cam? Do you think it shows one of these mysterious arms? Also, what do you make of the ancient Egyptian civilization? Do you think they received help that allowed them to achieve what they did? Many of us began to learn about ancient Egypt in primary school, and while sculpting models of the Great Pyramids and learning about the gore of mummification are both interesting, it's nothing compared to the truly fascinating, rich history of the country. A history that we are still unraveling to this day. From recovered artifacts to unsupported theories, the continued exploration of one of history's most iconic eras gives us a constantly increasing insight into the past. So we'll be taking a look at 3 mysteries from Egypt. The giant black boxes. The Serapeum of Sacra in Egypt is often considered to be the burial place of the Apis balls, a holy representation of God. Other professionals disagree, claiming that this is merely speculation, theories based on assumptions. The Apis balls were a symbol of a god, believed to be incarnations of a deity, able to walk the earth. A distinct difference, however, that separates the Apis bulls from other sacred animals is that they weren't considered to simply be messengers between a deity and the human population, but rather that the Apis bulls were the earthly manifestation of gods themselves. Some believe that the Apis bulls were specifically incarnations of the ancient Egyptian god of craftsmen and architects. He was a husband and a father in the triad of Memphis. He was also represented throughout history through both the Apis balls and the Djed pillars. These holy animals were believed to be buried here. Once an Apis ball passed away, it was believed that the gods became immortal, living in the form of an Osiris Apis. The importance of these balls is reflected in the high importance of this burial site. Worshipping the Apis balls was a holy experience for many ancient Egyptians. This was been a holy event since the first dynasty in Memphis. A cultural shift occurred where the Apis balls began to be worshipped as genuine gods. This was much later on, during the reign of King Kai's echoes of the Second Dynasty. The sacred burials of the Apis balls estimated to have begun in the 1350s. This was under the rule of the 9th pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. The area can be likened to a maze. It's a religious institution, often a temple, that's dedicated to the Greco-Egyptian deity Serapis. Serapis is considered to be a combination of the holy and worshipped aspects taking on a human form. Beneath this, a series of large stone boxes, sarcophagi, supposedly used to bury the Apis bulls have been found, with each lid being estimated to be 30 tons. There is currently an ongoing debate among scholars regarding how these burial boxes were created, as they were presumably moved without a wheel and crafted using primitive tools. The initial discovery of these tombs was carried out by a Greek geographer who traveled to Egypt in 24 AD. The site was then rediscovered in 1850. These 24 coffins, sarcophagi, were moved to this site at all. Debate and conjecture have been in high volume since the uncovering of these boxes in more modern periods. There are some people who don't even consider these boxes to be the coffins of the sacred balls, as the size is far greater than necessary to contain them. The contents of these sacred temples have been the source of plenty of speculation, theories, and research. Professionals have expected these impressive stone boxes to be crafted from limestone due to the nature of the material being far easier to work with. Much to the surprise of many researchers, the stone used to craft the sarcophagi was rose granite. This adds the prestige and grandeur of these sacred temples. The expertise and skill in the craft is incredibly precise. Airtight. The leading question at the forefront of skeptics' mind is, if these sarcophagi are designed for the sacred Apis bulls, then why are such complex materials used, as opposed to much simpler, more accessible, and more affordable alternatives? The majority of these sacred graves are crafted from rose granite, presumably sourced from a quarry just 800 kilometers away, though a small number of the stone boxes have been identified as being made from diorite. This material is not only more difficult to work with, but is also found at a much greater distance from the area, raising further questions as to why the creators of such impressive artifacts would use these materials that are so difficult to come across. Whilst the arguably most common assumption is that these boxes are sarcophagi, containing the remains of the Apis bulls, there are no traces or evidence of these bulls within the tombs. If they weren't what were tucked away in these grand, holy coffins, then what was hidden inside? The mystery of the missing pyramid ion. Egypt, particularly Giza, is shrouded in mystery. One of the most notable questions being the missing pyramid ion of the Great Pyramid of Khufu. These pyramid ions of the Egyptian pyramids were typically made of sacred Venvan stone, or prior to this use, they were made of limestone, granite, and zeolite, then coated in gold. For as long as modern historians, archaeologists, and Egyptologists have been aware, the Great Pyramid has been without its apex, no point and no tip on top. Some who have managed to climb to the top have taken measurements, concluding there's a space of approximately 30 feet flat on top of the pyramid. Speculation has arisen to what this pyramid ion looked like and what happened to the top of the Great Pyramid. Many professionals operate under the assumption that the pyramid was a pyramid, that the famous Egyptian architect and royal political advisor was alive when the designs, planning, and preparation of the Great Pyramid were underway. Some speculation has gone as far as to suggest that he may have suggested that Khufu hide the top of the pyramid within itself. His role in Egyptian society is largely unknown, even today. The understanding of his duties and even the span of his life are limited and have never been found. Ultimately, modern historians operate under the assumption that he was an architect and the Egyptian chancellor. He is presumed to be the mastermind behind some of the step pyramids, and some offer theories that he was the one who designed the Pyramid of Giza, perhaps without its top. Ancient traditions suggest that the pyramid ion is the final piece to be added to the pyramids, the most important, the most valuable aspect. Some believe the capstone for the Pyramid of Khufu was never there to begin with. This suggests the final piece of the puzzle was never created. Skeptics criticize this, debunking the theory and claiming that without the piece, the pyramid simply becomes a useless monument. Without the pyramid ion, the Pyramid of Giza may be assessed as simply a waste of time. A commonly accepted aspect of ancient Egyptian societies is that the pyramids were often used as tombs for pharaohs. The Great Pyramid allegedly was built by the pharaoh Cheops. The gold-covered pyramidions often symbolize the wealth of the pharaohs, but they also caught the shine of the sun, making those of higher societies visibly respected. Others argue that this demonstration of wealth simply invited thieves. Treasures and relics from within pyramids were known to be stolen. Perhaps this pyramid had a pyramidion that met the same fate. What is the true age of the pyramids? Some historians have been questioning the true age of the Egyptian pyramids. While we actively assume that ancient Egyptians built these impressive monuments, many now believe that the Great Pyramid of Giza may have been built by lost civilizations. This idea is fueled by the materials of the Sphinx. People think that the Sphinx has been made from natural rock, carved into the iconic shape before sand covered the area. This suggests that long before the ancient Egyptians arriving, the land had been fertile. This has been theorized by Malcolm Hutton and Jerry Cannon. Cannon explained that you can't carve a rock when it's under sand. This theory prompted further research. The pair carried on theorizing and gathering more evidence. Their calculations indicated that the Sphinx and the pyramids had been built a minimum of 12,500 years ago. This was near towards the Ice Age. Some people have suggested that incredibly advanced civilizations lived on Earth. Some even name Atlantis as an example. Through their societies, creations and breakthroughs were allegedly wiped out and destroyed through flooding. These theorists continue to explain that the sunken city of Atlantis has structures similar to the Egyptian pyramids we know today. Many believe that the pyramids of Giza have been created by these same populations. This suggests that the dates of Egyptian pyramids could be more than 12,000 years old, far outdating the ancient Egyptians. Despite the speculation, the Egyptian authorities continue to confirm that ancient Egyptian civilizations built these impressive landmarks, monuments, and pieces of history. We continue to discover plenty of Egypt's secrets, but many remain hidden. Many of the ideas that people create simply conflict and criticize existing premises. This constant changing and revising of ideas leaves us with many unanswered questions. Perhaps we won't ever find the solutions. So what do you make of these Egyptian mysteries? Cameras are great for capturing memories. They allow us to look back on memories of our life and reflect on what was going on at that point in time. Many of us have taken photographs of our loved ones and friends, and every so often these photos are brought to the surface. However, some have found old photographs they don't remember taking, or even more worryingly remember taking them but don't remember certain individuals being there at the time. This was the case for this photograph that not many have seen. The image in question shows a group of friends playing out in a field. However, it's the mysterious figure in the middle that's causing many to speculate what was captured on camera. It's said the photograph was taken during the 1980s or 1990s. Two photographs were taken on this day, each several seconds apart. In this photograph, though, we can see the mysterious figure standing in the middle of the group of friends. Online users who have seen the photos have said that in the photograph with the entity you can see only 4 friends, whereas in the other photograph you can see all 5. This has caused some to speculate that the 5th friend is actually the mysterious being. As some have pointed out, although the 5th friend is wearing black, they have white markings all across their clothing, and this would most likely appear in the photographs. Another slightly darker suggestion is that the people in the photograph didn't know they were having their picture taken, and the dark figure is the last thing these kids saw. However, there's no evidence to back up this story, and was most likely started to turn this photo into a type of urban legend. Others have suggested the figure is wearing black clothing, similar to that of a monk. All of the world is stories of ghost monks, and these are described as being very similar to the figure in this photograph. Another idea is that something bad happened in the area and now this figure can't escape. Those studying the paranormal have said that bad energies can take a long time to leave an area, and this is why paranormal beings are often spotted in places that have a dark history. For example, one of these has become known as non-intelligent hauntings. This is often best described as a collection of energy that hasn't been able to leave a certain era on this planet, and in turn people are always seeing the same energy over and over. These can appear in human forms such as those of the shadow people, and often what you'll see is the entity playing the same event over and over again. Could this be then that one of these entities was accidentally captured on camera? Since first being posted online, many theories have been put forth. However, as of today, the mysterious photograph remains a mystery. Throughout history, there have been reports of different paranormal entities. All cultures talk about the paranormal and afterlife in one form or another, and even to this day, millions of people believe in the paranormal. From a scientific perspective, it's said that what people are seeing is nothing more than natural phenomena or our minds playing tricks on us. One of the issues is that many of us haven't encountered anything paranormal, so it's hard to judge or give an opinion when we haven't experienced it ourselves. Those who have, however, have said it's changed the way they view the world, and that they now believe we share this world with mysterious entities. Over the years, paranormal researchers have given names to certain entities. For example, the poltergeist is said to be a type of ghost that's able to cause people harm and even move objects with force. The shadowed people will appear and disappear before people, seemingly made entirely out of nothing but a shadowy substance. Interestingly, these shadow figures are not limited to human form. According to witnesses, the black dogs of the British Isles are otherworldly apparitions that many believe to be hellhounds, ready to attack anyone nearby. It's described as being larger than a normal dog and featuring a shadow-like body with glowing red eyes. Many claim to have encountered the creatures shortly after a terrible storm, or in areas associated with deaths such as that of old places of execution and ancient buildings. The shadowed people are described as being black masses. They can often be seen around objects that are said to be haunted or in places where something bad has happened. One of the first things people say they feel when they see them is fear, and that it's as if they drain all of the energy out of the room and leave only darkness. Some have reported them as having glowing red eyes, while others say they have jet black eyes. It's not known what they want, but those who have seen them have said they think they're bad. Other people have seen them while trying to lucid dream. A lucid dream is a dream in which the person is not only aware they're dreaming, but can also control their dream. Some have expressed their doubts about whether this is real, but lucid dreaming is backed up by scientific studies. A 2009 study by the Neurological Laboratory in Frankfurt revealed increased brain activity during lucid dreams. Some people who have claimed to master this have said they can make any situation happen. However, there is another side to this. Many who have attempted to lucid dream say that they've experienced something that's put them off it forever. Some describe it as the man in black, while others call it the boogeyman. It seems that if it's not done correctly, lucid dreams can give you an incredibly bad nightmare. Some of these have even affected the person weeks after the experience. What's interesting is that many of the reports are eerily similar. This has caused researchers to speculate that what people are seeing is indeed genuine. Paranormal researchers, however, have warned people against trying to contact these entities. One of the ways it's said you're able to do this is by lucid dreaming. However, if it's not done properly, it's said you can have a negative experience. This was the case for a woman who tried it for the first time. She said the following about her encounter. My experience happened several years ago in the house I grew up. I lived in a large farmhouse built nearly 200 years ago, and my parents had spent the best part of 5 years renovating the house. When it was finished, it looked amazing and was a lovely place to live in. One night, me and my friend got on the subject of the paranormal and other weird subjects, and I explained to her that I wasn't sure if I believed in any of them. She told me that I needed to open my mind, and that there was a way I could do this through my dreams. She explained that if I followed these rules, I would be able to control what was going on in my dreams, and that I would even remember it when I woke up. I know there's many different ways, but she told me a way that worked great for her. She said that I had to fight the urge to fall asleep and keep focused on one part of the room. I did this, but it got to the point where I could hardly keep my eyes open. But not long after, I had a really strange sensation come over me. It was like I was sinking into the bed. The worst part about it, though, was that I couldn't move. I was completely frozen in place. The room was not dark, as it was dimly lit by the light on my garage. That was when I noticed something dark in the corner of my closet. It wasn't really a figure, but more like an opaque mass that stood against the light. I tried to blink the sleep from my eyes, failing to understand what I was looking at. Suddenly, without time to react, I felt the other side of the bed sink down and covers stretching over me. I could then feel what appeared to be 2 hands wrapped around me from behind. The pressure of the hands on my chest pulled me downwards slightly. A hollow, raspy voice spoke so loud that it sounded like it was in my head. Told me I was marked. That was when I shot up in bed and completely out of whatever sleep state I was in. There was nothing in my room that could have created the shadow. This experience has affected my life as I now struggle to sleep without having a light on and will not sleep in anyone else's house or a hotel. What's strange is that my friend said this would definitely work, but clearly it only works for certain people. I wasn't someone who actively believed or followed the paranormal. I was nervous going into this, but I was actually happy and excited to try something new. But after my experience, I will never do it again. If you're someone that works in a job that involves demolishing buildings or excavating through areas that aren't well known, it's very likely you've discovered some interesting things. Workers have managed to uncover some of these relics and artifacts, and once studied, most of them are eventually identified. However, a construction worker who was working inside an old building made a surprising discovery when knocking down a wall. The person in question was said to be working on an old house, and that there was some structural damage to the house, so they were called in to fix it. When making their way to one room, they noticed there was a cover over the wall, and the worker guessed that something was behind there. After knocking through the wall, they discovered something that would spook many people. Behind the wall was an old-looking Ouija board. However, the worker couldn't figure out why the previous owners would want to seal the board behind the wall. Some have suggested the board in question is quite old, and that it could have been placed here after a session with the board went wrong. I've heard the last few decades there have been many stories detailing the board and how things don't always go to plan. This could have been the case for the previous owners, with one person suggesting they may have purchased the board for fun, but it ended up contacting something that caused them to flee the house. The construction worker who discovered the board didn't seem fazed by the stories though, as it was reported that when they discovered the Woody board, they tried to find the planchette. There is of course another explanation for the board being where it was, and that could be the previous owners playing a prank on the next owners of the house. As of today, it's not known why the board was buried inside the wall, and why they had in their possession such an old version of the board. Another theory is that the board was passed down by previous family members, and this generation wasn't aware the board was concealed inside the house. Regardless of the origin is certainly an interesting find, and not something you'd expect to come across while working. Ghosts, spirits, angels, demons, and many other such paranormal entities have captivated the minds of humans. For years we have heard stories about these mysterious entities, and a few of us have even experienced them firsthand. Despite all of the advancements made in science and technology, and despite scientists being able to unravel some of the most complex mysteries in the universe, it seems that we have completely skipped over one particular field of study. It's the study of the paranormal. Many ancient civilizations studied paranormal activities, ways of interacting with different paranormal entities, and harnessing their power for the greater good. Probably the most famous curse game in existence is that of the Ouija board. Over the last few decades, it's led to many rumors, stories, movies, and even video games that were inspired by few witness accounts of the game commonly played during sleepovers. The Ouija board is usually nothing more than a piece of wood with markings across it. They can be used to spell out any words and easily answer any yes or no questions. The strangeness of the game doesn't come from the board itself, but rather how it's used. Participants of the game must light a few candles and sit in a completely dark room around the board, and all collectively hold what's referred to as a planchette. After someone asks a question to the room, a spirit will begin to move the planchette as everyone remains holding on to it, and work to spell out the answer provided by the spirit. What's interesting about this game is that it's actually commonly used in seances and by psychics who wish to get into contact with spirits. In fact, there's a whole dedicated community online that will help you get the board that will best work for you, as well as provide the rules and etiquette of how to play the game without disturbing any malevolent spirits. The more aggressive part of the game comes from people who refuse to follow the proper rules, and believe the curse game to be nothing more than rumors and fake stories. The rejection of the rules will lead to a spirit attempting to attach itself onto the participants of the game and begin to attack or haunt the individual for as long as they wish. Accounts of this occurring have been all too common and have even led to the exorcisms and ritual cleansings just to get rid of those affected by the spirits that have attached to them. Throughout Arabic folklore is that of terrifying legends and reports of an entity similar to that of the jinn referenced throughout the Quran, but cursed to roam and dwell in locations away from people. This entity is known as the ghoul. The ghoul is that of a shape-shifting, demonic entity that's been reported as inhabiting cemeteries, wandering through the desert and taking on the form of animals and loved ones in an attempt to get close to someone before devouring them. Variations of the ghoul legend claim that once a ghoul devours someone, it will begin to take on their form and become stuck in that form until another person is devoured, or an incantation is spoken to allow it to return to its truly demonic form. It's due to this reason why many believe the ghoul inhabits cemeteries as to allow it to take on the form of recently deceased loved ones, and whoever else it chooses. Interestingly, there's a number of reports and theories all throughout Iran and Afghanistan with people believing that the demonic entities of the jinn and the ghoul. One of the most haunting stories of a haunting coming from a demonic entity is that of the story of the Zozo demon and the countless number of people it has targeted in the past. According to reports made by people all across the internet posting on blog forums, Reddit, and a number of open forum sites, it became apparent to many that the name of the Zozo demon kept popping up all around the world. The first known popular blog post concerning this demonic entity was written back in 2009 and made by a man named Daryl Evans, of whom refers to the dark entity as the Ouijaball demon. He gave the entity this name due to the fact that he first made contact with the Zozo demon when using a Ouijaball, and that he became obsessed with it in his spare time. According to Darren, however, these proper rules weren't followed during the summoning of the Zozo demon. After the planchettes of the board began spelling out Zozo over again, Darren asked the spirit what its purpose was, to which he replied to bring you and your family paradise. When asked what paradise is, the demon slowly spelled out hell. Shortly after this, Darren wrote that no matter what he did, where he moved or what he tried to do, the spirit tortured him for years after this event, even going as far as causing his 1-year-old daughter to become violently ill. Though many have often claimed that Darren Evans made up the whole event, a whole community has formed around the Zozo demon, as many others have stepped forward claiming they've encountered the demon when playing with the Ouija board, as well as uncovering a number of ancient writings describing a demon referred to as Ozo, responsible for a number of terrorizing incidents in the past. Today, there are still reports of people being tormented by the entity all around the world. Another interesting account of a spirit comes from the 17th century. This was when there was a number of executions held at the Greyfriars Kirkyard. This was when the king at the time was attempting to convert many followers of the Christian faith to a newly founded state religion. Without much surprise, this has led to the Greyfriars Kirkyard being referenced by paranormal researchers as one of the most documented and reported haunted locations in the world. Though many hold the belief that the site remains to be at the center of a number of paranormal entities, many of them being among the 18,000 victims during the 17th century, others claim the main man behind the hauntings to be that of Sir George Mackenzie, the man single-handedly responsible for the suffering of the people during this time. Proof of this claim comes from the fact that the first reported attacks from this paranormal entity came from 1998. Shortly after a homeless man wanting to find shelter during a storm opened the tomb of Sir George Mackenzie. The first incident took place the following day after the tomb was broken into when a passerby attempted to enter the tomb, but was blasted back by a cold force of air that knocked them down. Later that day, another woman was found near the tomb's entrance, passed out and lying across the front of the tomb with her neck completely covered in bruises. When she came back to consciousness shortly after, she told those concerned that she had walked by the tomb and found that she couldn't breathe, slowly losing consciousness shortly after. Since this day back in 1998, there have been more than 500 reported attacks near the tomb and throughout the Greyfriars Kirkyard, with an untold many more left unreported for fear of being ridiculed. Antarctica is one of the least explored places on the planet. It's perhaps best known for its harsh climate and beautiful wildlife. Over the years, though, there have been some mysterious discoveries on the continent. Each year, research is carried out here and experiments are conducted. Scientists have recently reported that a massive object that could change our understanding is hidden beneath the ice. These claims have caused theorists to speculate about what could be lying under the ice. This mysterious anomaly is believed to be under an area called Wilkes Land. The area is over 150 miles across and has a minimum depth of around 2,500 feet. Interestingly, researchers have suggested that it could be the remains of a giant asteroid. If this is the case, it would have been twice the size of the asteroid that struck Mexico 66 million years ago. This could help to answer one of the planet's most mysterious events. During the Permian-Triassic, a massive extinction event happened. It caused over 96% of Earth's sea creatures and over 70% of the vertebrate organisms living on Earth to perish. This giant rock could have been behind that event. This mysterious anomaly was first brought to the attention of researchers in 2006. This was when NASA's satellite picked up on gravitational changes. Going back last year, scientists announced that they had managed to reach a subglacial lake which was under Antarctica. Incredibly, this lake was over 3,000 feet below the surface of the ice. The Subglacial Antarctic Lake Scientific Access said the following about the event. It's taken almost 2 whole days of drilling to reach the subglacial lake during this holiday season. The team of researchers included over 40 scientists, drudgers, and various other staff members. Incredibly, the researchers were able to see a glimpse of the giant subglacial body of water. It's been estimated that it's twice the size of Manhattan. The researchers are currently studying the lake and hope to understand its depth, temperatures, and what kind of life is down there. Due to it being a remote place, some have come forward and said there could be creatures down there unknown to science. They've planned to place remote-controlled robots down there to capture some footage. This will help the scientists better understand what they're dealing with. One of the chief scientists said they were unsure of what to expect, as it's such a new discovery and they're still learning as they went along. Although this sounds like an easy task, it's not just a matter of digging a hole. There are specific steps that need to happen for this to work. For example, the scientists needed to test the water was clean. After doing this, it turned out the water was as clean as filtered water. One of the scientists on the mission said the following, "It's exciting that we are sampling the deepest standing water bodies humans have ever accessed beneath Antarctica. This is a slow process though, and it will take a few years to collect and process the data." Interestingly, it's been said this might not be the only subglacial lake in the area. Researchers have confirmed and said there could be around 400 lakes hiding beneath Antarctica's ice sheets. Is anyone's guess as to what could be hiding down there? It's believed by many different researchers from around the world that the continent of Antarctica was once inhabited with that of lush green forests surrounding the entire area. Evidence of this can be found when looking at a team of archaeologists and researchers that led an expedition in Antarctica in November of 2016. This mission lasted for several months and ended in January of 2017. The team found evidence of lush forests in the region after locating and discovering several different traces of fertile growing lands, areas of climate change in the past, as well as large amounts of fossil fragments from ancient trees, and these dated as far back as 260 million years ago. Interestingly, this timeline correlates with one very important event in the past, the Permian period, also known as the greatest mass extinction event in the history of the world. Before this event, there was much more carbon naturally in the atmosphere, of which created lush green forest all around the world. This large amount of carbon allowed for species to grow in the region. The forestification of deserts and the ability for our atmosphere to support larger forms of animal life on the land. It's interesting then to consider this idea that roughly 260 million years ago, the continent of Antarctica would have been a densely populated lush green forest, with a tremendous variation in wildlife and ecosystems. A professor at the University of Wisconsin argues that the continent as a whole was much warmer and even more humid than many areas today. In fact, he is overwhelming evidence that the area would have been closer in resemblance to the denser forest found over the globe. Additionally, at the rate of the burning fossil fuels, of which is reintroducing this carbon into the atmosphere that was lost during the Permian extinction, we will soon be reaching atmospheric conditions once again, of which will allow the continent of Antarctica to be a thriving frost within a few more hundred years. Shortly after the expedition uncovered the fossils of ancient trees in the region, researchers were obsessed with uncovering proof of larger life throughout the area. Back in 2010, researchers used techniques in explosives and large-scaling blasting to blout layers of surface rock against the Antarctic mountainsides. This was to uncover possible fossil layers buried deep beneath the glaciers throughout the area. After several months of searching and mining for fossils, the research team uncovered exactly what they were hoping for. It appeared that fossils of ancient dinosaurs inhabiting the region millions of years ago in the past, roughly around the same time after the Permian extinction, were uncovered after going down past the layers of the glacial rocks in the region. Interestingly, bones of another strange creature have been uncovered that's believed to be that of a species of dinosaur never before found. According to their reports, the paleontologists accompanying the research team discovered a densely packed grouping of fossils belonging to different types of dinosaurs, and these dinosaurs are known as sauropods. Sauropod skulls are usually very rare to find in other areas, as they were very delicate during the life of the creature. And so a completely intact skull is rare to find in one completely fossilized piece. These skulls are known by the paleontologists as being delicate. The bones of these massive dinosaurs were said to be 50% lighter than previously thought, so the fact it survived this long is really impressive. Luckily for the team, among the densely packed fossils were that of bones of limbs, vertebrae, arms, legs, and a completely intact skull. Many of these bones have already been rendered in complete 3D imaging technologies that will help to preserve their finds for all time. Another interesting discovery comes in the form of the Piri-Reis map. This map is the oldest map to show the Americas, and to this day it still confuses many people. In 1929, a group of historians discovered something incredible drawn on a gazelle skin. After the document was studied, research and tests showed that it was genuine. It was drawn in 1513 by Piri-Reis, a famous admiral of the Turkish fleet in the 16th century. What's interesting is that he's primarily known today for his maps and charts, specifically for how accurate they are. He was ranked highly within the Turkish Navy. However, he went on to say that he compiled and copied certain pieces of data from other sources. One thing that many people question is why it shows Antarctica without ice. Antarctica was mostly icy forest, and for the last 15 million years it's been a frozen desert under a thick ice sheet. On the map, the northern coastline of Antarctica is detailed. Another thing that stands out is the map is very accurate. How did this happen when the map was created 300 years before it was discovered? Interestingly, on the 6th of July 1960, the U.S. Air Force responded to a letter sent by Professor Charles H. Habgood. He was asking for an evaluation of the ancient map. This was the response. Your request of evaluation of certain unusual features of the Piri-Reis Antarctican map of 1513 by this organization has been reviewed. They claim that the lower part of the map portrays the Princess Martha coast of Queen Maud, and the Palma Peninsula is reasonable. We find this is the most logical and correct interpretation of the map. The geographical detail shown in the lower part of the map agrees very remarkably with the results of seismic profiles, some of which were made by the Swedish-British Antarctic Expedition of 1949. This indicates the coastline has been mapped before it's covered by the ice cap. This part of Antarctica is ice-free. The ice cap in this region is now about a mile thick. We have no idea how the data on this map can be reconciled with the supposed state of the geographic knowledge in 1513. Harold said, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force Commander, so there are some conflicting reports. How can this map show Antarctica with no ice? Scientists state there's been ice on the continent for millions of years. Many experts have analyzed the diagram and realized it portrays an accurate depiction of the world. There are areas on our planets that haven't been explored by humans. It's these pockets of wilderness that some say are harboring prehistoric life. For some time now, there have been reports of alleged dinosaurs coming from these regions. And although you would be right being skeptical, so many people have allegedly had run-ins with these prehistoric creatures. One prehistoric creature that turned out to still be alive was that of the coelacanth. The underwater world is home to hundreds of thousands of species. And going back millions of years ago, prehistoric fish and reptiles ruled the dams. One of these mysterious creatures went by the name of the coelacanth, and this strange-looking fish was estimated to have gone extinct millions of years ago. However, every so often a diver would come forward and say they'd seen one in the wild. This was, of course, immediately written off as the creature was known to have become extinct. But when more and more reports started to come in, researchers finally decided to investigate. It turned out that when the scientists put a team together to investigate the creatures, they not only found they were real, but that they had been around since the time of the dinosaurs. It's examples like this why people don't rule out the possibility of prehistoric creatures still roaming our planet. Perhaps one of the most well-known images allegedly depicting a dinosaur is that of this one. The story goes that while in an unknown location, this individual was able to capture some strange creatures. When first seeing them, the person wasn't sure what they were, and so decided to get their phone out and start recording these creatures. It wasn't until the footage was uploaded that some pointed out they looked like sauropods. For those unaware, sauropods were the largest of the dinosaurs that walked our planet millions of years ago. The largest of these sauropods is believed to be that of Argentinosaurus, a Platycotitan minorium, and they would have reached lengths of up to 40 meters or 131 feet. However, when sauropods were young, they would have been much smaller than their parents. Although many don't believe these titans survived the extinction event, some suggested that a new species was able to branch off, and this is why we have stories of these creatures. One of the more famous ones being that of the Mchetamembe. Going back to the baby sauropods, it was hailed as one of the most clear photographs yet of a previously unknown species. But as it turned out, someone had reversed the images, and what we're actually looking at is a group of coats. Interestingly, coats played in reverse do look like what a sauropod is thought to have looked like. These creatures are known for their love of fruits and can be found in Central America. They don't weigh much more than a house cat and try to avoid animals such as jaguars. Although in this case it didn't turn out to be a prehistoric animal, there are many instances in which haven't yet been explained. One of these comes from the famous explorer Lieutenant Colonel Percy Fawcett. Percy Fawcett is a well-known explorer of South America. During his travels, he encounters some mysterious things along the way. Although some have brushed aside these stories, others have questioned that would someone who had this much experience lie about what they saw. On one particular occasion, while exploring the Amazon, Percy and his son discovered what appeared to be giant footprints. The reason he was here is because the locals discovered what was described as a large sauropod-like dinosaur. They sent in the lieutenant to mark the boundaries and investigate what the locals had discovered. After arriving here, it said that Percy admitted to seeing a creature that resembled that of a diplodocus, and that this creature was confirmed to have existed by the locals, as they stated that over the course of several years, they'd encountered these creatures on various occasions. It was said they wasn't harmful but could cause a lot of damage if they wanted. The creature in question is said to be a smaller version of the prehistoric diplodocus, and is usually seen in dense vegetation. One of the local tribe members said that many of these have vanished over the years, and going back 100 years ago, seeing this creature was much more common. When pressed for why he thinks they become rare, he said they were hunted for their meat and they could cause damage to surrounding homes. So they wanted to stop them. So the next question is, what are these tribes encountering? After questioning members of the tribe back in the early 1900s, they said that what they are seeing is no normal wildlife. Further saying that the ancient beasts have moved into the swamps and nearby waters for protection, and that if you approach one, it will come for your canoe. Some, however, have suggested that what these people are encountering are hippos. However, as pointed out, how could Percy Forsyth get these two confused? A diplodocus looks much different to a hippo. As of today, these mysterious creatures remain a mystery. It's not just land where alleged prehistoric animals have been encountered. Although not dinosaurs, plesiosaurs were creatures that lived alongside the dinosaurs millions of years ago, and some have suggested these giant marine reptiles somehow managed to survive the extinction event. This is due to the fact that all over the world there have been many sightings of these creatures. Perhaps one of the most famous is that of the Loch Ness Monster. Some have made the connection between the two creatures and have put forward the idea that the Loch Ness Monster is in fact a surviving plesiosaur species. Possibly one of the biggest ocean mysteries is that of the search for the Loch Ness Monster. Although many of us have heard stories or seen pictures of the creature, it's long been a mystery as to what the Loch Ness Monster actually is. Theories for the creature have been thrown around for years, some more believable than others. Researchers have said, though, that these could just be anomalies and don't prove anything. Skeptics say that 99% of the Loch Ness Monster sightings can be explained, and they do turn out to be things that are usually mundane, suggesting that what people are actually seeing is things like logs in the water. This can give a distorted image and make people think they're seeing something that's not actually there. Natural phenomena is also said to be another candidate, as well as pareidolia and even local. What's interesting, though, is there's other creatures out there that match the description of the Loch Ness Monster. One of these goes by the name of Champ. It's a popular Canadian monster that resides deep within Lake Champlain. It's proven to be one of the most legendary and popular monsters ever residing within the Canadian border. Located within the Canadian province of Quebec is that of Lake Champlain, a freshwater lake that holds more than 300 reported sightings of the serpentine-like creature, that many claim is perhaps a distant cousin to that of the Loch Ness Monster. High-quality photographs taken back in 1977 have been proven to be authentic, leading many to believe that Champ is that of a plesiosaur. Scientific proof of the creature's existence has also been gathered in the modern day. This was after a team of marine specialists working for the Fauna Communications Research. After doing so, they picked up on an unknown marine animal sound similar to that of a beluga whale, but not from no known marine animal in existence. Today, the monster has a status similar to that of the Loch Ness Monster, and has become the center of cryptid enthusiasts attempting to prove the viability of a surviving plesiosaur species in the modern day. Located on the border of the state of Utah and Idaho in the United States, there appears to be strange sightings of an underwater creature that has been referred to by the locals as the Bear Lake Monster. According to witness reports, this creature is described as being a large serpent with legs more than 18 inches long that quickly runs across the shoreline. It would later surface that back in 1868, many locals in the region were interested in these strange sightings, and so would go on to cause a full investigation on the matter, and this was led by church leaders in the area and other reputable sources of information. These investigations would go on to uncover many different accounts from people living on or near the lake that regarded the existence of the creature as fact, along with questioning some of the Native American populations in the region that told of ancient stories and myths about the lake, and how it was inhabited by a serpent-like water devil. Other church leaders then quickly took interest in the creature, and became obsessed with attempting to capture the strange serpent in an effort to parade it around as a real-life demon that could be used to show the power of God in capturing the beast. A resident near the lake even proposed building a large basin hook attached to a cable of rope more than 300 feet long, and attaching it to a boat to a buoy in the hopes of capturing the creature. However, this tactic never managed to capture the Bear Lake Monster. As of today's sightings of the Bear Lake Monster continue, some even reported that a large underwater behemoth has exited the water and destroyed their camp, while taking one of their horses underwater for a snack. The human body is something that's fascinated scientists for years. Although science has done a great job at understanding many of the functions, there's still some that have caused confusion. For example, laughter is a pretty hard thing to measure in the scientific world. Even comedians whose whole job centers around laughter have a hard time describing and conveying what it can really mean. Laughter allows people to grow their social awareness, to integrate into a group or to isolate themselves away. It allows someone to release tension, make a positive environment, make new connections, and can even work to heal and greatly impact mental illness. Given that humor is an abstract concept that takes a level of higher learning, it's no wonder then that laughter and its evolutionary reasons for occurrence and mechanisms elude us, and even the most forefront of research scientists even to this day. Without laughter, our ability to socially network would be greatly impaired, which purely as a survival mechanism proves to have very little value outside of immediate trouble impacts. Another added fact is that the causes behind laughter can range from logical strings, realizations, satire, and other complex areas of high thinking and creativity that come from many different areas of the brain. Knowing how complex laughter can be in the real world and its causes, it could take decades before scientists cracked the code behind the biological mechanisms of laughter. Another mystery that's been linked to ancient civilizations is that of the pineal gland. The pineal gland is something that's interested many people worldwide. It's a small gland that's located near the center of the brain. The job of this gland is to secrete melatonin, which acts as a regulator of the sleep and wake cycle. It's around the size of a pea. The small gland, though, has been known throughout history. Different civilizations have had their own take on the gland. And what's interesting is that many of them seem to share a similar belief on what the gland actually does. Ancient traditions state the gland allowed you to connect to the physical and spiritual world. Many ancient civilizations show either drawings or artwork depicting the gland. They didn't call it the pineal gland, though. Depending on where you look, it goes by different names. It's said that if you're able to lock into this third eye, you gain a higher power. The third eye controls various body functions. It works in harmony with the rest of the body and allows you to have much more control over things. Some believe the reason it's hidden deep inside the brain is because it has massive importance. It allows you to see things different, to view other worlds, to travel space and even warp time. Ancient legends state that if you're able to control the third eye, your unlockability is that you thought were never possible. Some have even suggested that it happens every so often when we dream. Every so often, individuals may have a dream that feels real, and this could be the third eye releasing chemicals to allow you to see these views. The more in sync you are with this gland, the more you'll be able to view certain things that don't seem possible. Ancient cultures believe there is a very thin line between consciousness and thoughts. The third eye is said to help you in seeing beyond the physical reality. One of the reasons people say that yoga and meditation helps with the third eye is because you're focusing your energy on thoughts. This in turn means you're listening to your thoughts and opening your mind to bigger things. As mentioned, since ancient times the third eye has been known by many different cultures. The most interesting is some have suggested this is what they're talking about when they spoke of higher powers. It's just we've misinterpreted what they were talking about. Some cultures believe that when we're struggling to find answers, this inner wisdom will guide us. Each culture has its own meaning of the third eye. There's not one answer for what it is. Some have suggested that the third eye is what gives us a sixth sense. When you feel as though someone is looking at you and it turns out they are, this is the third eye working. It's guarding you and helping you when you can't necessarily see what's going on around you. Some have said the Egyptians were one of the first to lock into the third eye. This comes in the form of the Eye of Horus. It's said to help with protection, power, and good health. It's said that those who locked onto this would be superior. Interestingly, this matches many of the things that other cultures have said about the third eye. Of course, as of right now, these are just theories. But what's interesting is how many different cultures and ancient cultures across the world talked about this mysterious third eye. As mentioned, even to this day, it can be found in art, drawings, and sculptures. As of right now, though, modern science calls this the pineal gland and state that it has nothing to do with a higher power. Some have said this could all be linked to a higher consciousness. Questions surrounding the human consciousness could very easily be some of the biggest questions in the universe for humanity. What exactly makes us conscious? What separates us, a living entity, with a non-living entity? What allows us to grow, to change, to think, and to play around the environment and the universe itself? These are the questions that have plagued humanity since it first became conscious and self-aware. What is life? Of course, it's pretty impossible for us to know and to truly understand the mechanisms of human consciousness. The human brain is so incredibly complex that it could take hundreds, if not thousands of years, even at the rate of technological innovation, before we even get close to understanding the capacity and causes behind every function of human consciousness. In fact, some scientists think it might even be nothing more than misinformation and that human consciousness is not real, but rather an interpretation of ourselves outside of purely physical phenomenon. In this abstract, we could merely be falsely believing we are conscious, but secretly we have no free will, and everything inside our minds could merely be a product of our universe at the beginning of its conception. Religious and spiritual beliefs directly contradict this theory, and holds that humans contain an almost supernatural powerful consciousness to exist outside of the universe, and to be a product of divine inspiration, even perhaps manifesting control over our bodies via a soul or spirit that lives on forever, and this spirit carries on after our physical bodies pass away. It's obvious that though there may be an incredible amount of time, energy, and research into the endeavors of human consciousness and the biological mechanisms behind it, it's still widely unknown and probably even impossible to measure or to understand. This is something that scientists have taken seriously, and over the years many tests have been carried out. Dr. Christopher Kerr and his team have been studying dreams of patients when they're close to death. Incredibly, the team claim that our loved ones are waiting for us on the other side. It's been documented that when a person is close to death, they tend to have more dreams about loved ones. This means the person is normally happier as they're starting to accept that there may be a chance of seeing them again. So instead of fearing the unknown, they embrace it. It's an interesting way to look at life. For many people, they fear you only get one life, and after you pass away, there's nothing. This theory suggests, though, that we could be reunited with our loved ones. The truth is, we don't really understand consciousness, and there are many mysteries about the human body. Another interesting study comes from two leading scientists. They say the human body is a biological computer and the consciousness of a human being is a program that runs by the brain's computer. It's believed that within the human brain there resides around 86 billion brain cells. The soul is something that's made many people put forward different theories. There has always been a debate about the soul of a human and whether or not it goes on after life. There are those that believe your soul is what's actually keeping you alive, while others suggest the soul is nothing. However, recently researchers think they've found a new truth about the soul. They've put forward the theory the soul doesn't die, it goes back into the universe. Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose have been working on the quantum theory of consciousness. Both of them suggest the soul of a person is in the microtubules of the brain cells. Their theory states that human being's soul is contained within the cells of the brain in structures that are inside them called microtubules. It sounds confusing, but the doctors think the human brain is just like a biological computer, and the consciousness we experience is run by the computer inside the brain. This means it will continue to exist after the human is gone. Both of them suggest that what humans think of consciousness is the result of the effects of quantum gravity that is situated in the microtubules. Others have similar beliefs in which they think the body is just a portal in which the spirit resides in. And when you pass on, whatever allowed us to be conscious carries on in the universe. So my question to you guys is, what do you make of the pineal gland? One of the only known alien encounters that would lead to the prolonged civil lawsuit and witness testimony of countless military personnel has left many skeptics of the alien awareness movement grasping at straws in rejection of the overwhelming evidence of the visitation of extraterrestrial life. Known as the Cash Landron UFO alien encounter, several individuals would be involved in the sighting of an unidentified flying object that would leave them crippled and injured and in need of monetary assistance for the rest of their lives. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we will be going over this impossible to explain alien encounter and the truth behind the court battle that would later ensue. According to the witness account of Betty Cash, Vicky Landrum, and 7-year-old Colby Landrum, back on the evening of the 19th of December during 1980, the three witnesses claimed to have been the victims of an impossible to explain alien encounter. The witnesses detailed that they were driving home to the city of Dayton, Texas, on an isolated 2-lane road at around 9 o'clock p.m. They witnessed a large diamond-shaped craft hovering above a dense tree line off of the side of the road that was emitting a bright light and appeared to have been hovering over the area. At first, Betty Cash and Vicky Landrum believed that light to have been an aircraft on its way to the Houston Intercontinental Airport roughly 35 miles away. But as they continued on their journey, they noticed that the light had followed them and was now described as being much closer and far brighter than standard aircraft lights. Once the craft was spotted at this point, the two adults, Betty Cash and Vicky Landrum, parked at the side of the road and exited the car to get a better look at the craft. The craft was described as being an intensely bright light with a body that was a dull metallic silver, and shaped like an upright diamond and estimated at being the size of the Dayton Water Tower. The top and bottom of the craft appeared to have been cut off, however, making the pointed parts of the diamond shape appear almost flat. The base of the diamond-shaped craft was expelling large flames and emitting a significant heat that even at the distance the two witnesses could feel the radiated warmth from the base of the craft. Immediately, Vicky Landrum, a recent born-again Christian, began to have a religious experience and claimed that the object was a sign of the second coming of Jesus Christ. Vicky Landrum then began trying to convince Betty Cash to approach the diamond-shaped craft, claiming that the ship itself was Jesus Christ and that he would not hurt them. Unlike Vicky Landrum, however, Betty Cash began to feel an overwhelming feeling of anxiety. They would both later account the following quote from what they remembered of the craft. The object, intensely bright and dull metallic silver, was shaped like a huge upright diamond, about the size of the Dayton Water Tower, with its top and bottom cut off so that they were flat rather than pointed. Small blue lights ringed the center, and periodically, over the next few minutes, flames shot out of the bottom, flaring outward, creating the effect of a large cone. Every time the fire dissipated, the UFO floated a few feet downwards towards the road. But when the flames blasted out again, the object rose about the same distance. The encounter was cut short, however, when Cash and Landrum counted about 23 helicopters identified as being tandem-rotor Boeing C-47 Chinooks, a make and model often used by military from around to leave the area as they surrounded the diamond-shaped structure and led it to an undisclosed location. Following this encounter, strangely enough, all three witnesses began experiencing illnesses that are commonly associated with radiation sickness. Their symptoms included nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, generalized weakness, a burning sensation and irritation in their eyes, and markings on their skin that were indicative of intense sunburn. A radiologist working with an independent UFO organization examined the three witnesses and commented the following statement. "We have strong evidence that these patients have suffered secondary damage to ionicing radiation. It is also possible that there was an infrared component as well. It was due to their illnesses that Cash and Landrum would eventually take their claims to court against the United States government after being questioned by the Bergstrom Air Force Base, and were told by the Air Force personnel to hire a lawyer and seek financial compensation for $20 million from the United States government for their injuries. By 1986, after an extensive legal battle and countless military official testimonies, the judge dismissed the claims under the reasoning that the helicopters or the diamond-shaped craft could not be proved as being evidence of being the product of the United States government, or the U.S. government's responsibility. Interestingly, this type of injury is not uncommon, and those who have had close encounters with these crafts have reported similar injuries. One thing that is for sure is that the government has a keen interest in these mysterious crafts. This is backed up by many secret programs that have operated under secret black projects. It's only been in recent years that government officials have opened up about these claims, saying that the UFO phenomena is in fact real, going on to say that they are currently withholding information from the public and are waiting for an appropriate time to declassify this information. The next question is, why have they held this information for so long? Why are they so against releasing this to the public? As of right now, only they know the answer to this, but if 2020 has shown are being more open about these unidentified flying objects, something that UFO researchers have praised. It seems that time will tell whether they declassify more information surrounding this topic. UFO sightings are becoming increasingly common, and evidence of alien activity is constantly being leaked to the public. Governments are finding it harder to keep information regarding UFOs hidden, with no shortage of hacking attempts and ex-government officials giving up more insights. No matter what you might believe when it comes to UFOs, the evidence is in favor of alien life existing. And as more people are opening up to the possibility that we are not alone in the universe, more people are starting to take an interest. But what do you all think of this interesting witness account of a clearly advanced aviation technology that points towards evidence of covered-up knowledge of extraterrestrial life and government involvement? Entire disciplines have been devoted to understanding how our ancestors lived, and this task is not always an easy one. Frequently, historians and archaeologists have to puzzle fragments of pottery or tools to try to quite literally piece together how our ancestors survived. It would certainly be easier if the ancients had spelled it out for us, which is why records of books, scrolls, or writings of any kind are especially valued when attempting to understand the past. Finds of this nature can prove accounts of daily life, intricacies of religion, or even marvelous advances in technology. However, frequently such apparently simple discoveries can leave us with more questions about the past than the answer. So, we'll be taking a look at 3 mysterious books that have shed some light on our ancestors and left us asking more questions. Picatrix. The Picatrix is the Latin title given to an ancient book written in Arabic that dates back to the 10th or 11th century and contains spells and occult instructions for nearly all aspects of life. Its Arabic title translates to the aim of the sage or the goal of the wise, and it contains such detailed descriptions of magic and astrology that it has become highly influential in many cultures all over the world. Grouped into 4 books, each containing several chapters, the Picatrix covers nearly any subject that an ancient magical practitioner could wish to master, including the motion of the planets and stars and their effects on Earth, how to communicate with the celestial bodies, summoning spirits, avoiding harmful spirits, magic and its properties, drawing the vigor of the moon for use on Earth, and creating scientific compounds for experimentation. Most of the instructional recipes contained in the Picatrix are intended to bend astrological and natural forces towards a personal will, bringing about a desired outcome such as finding treasure, exterminating rodents, healing the sick, and the list goes on and on. However, the recipes and concoctions included within the pages of this book are not for the faint of heart, an aspect that has contributed greatly to its notoriety. Some of the more dangerous ingredients include blood, bodily excretions, and brain matter, as well as a litany of psychoactive medication and hallucinogenic plants. Ingesting the contents of a recipe from this book would result in an altered state of consciousness or even loss of life. John Michael Greer's translation of one recipe states, "Take 4 ounces of the blood of a black dog, 2 ounces each of pig's blood and brains, and 1 ounce of donkey brains. Mix all this together until well blended. When you give this medicine to someone in food or drink, he will hate you." Perhaps it doesn't take an expert in astrology and the occult to know this much. The Picatrix is also a book with enormous historical insights, despite the dubious and frequently dangerous contents. Some scholars believe that the unusual formatting is indicative of a student or students who were taking notes, as if during a lecture. The common teachings of the era, although no true proof backs this theory up. Researchers also attribute the beginnings of the scientific method for experimentation to the document, which may have occurred as the passages were translated from Arabic to Hebrew. These rudimentary methods include the formation of a hypothesis and the creation of controlled conditions under which the hypothesis may be tested. Regardless of whether these theories are truly accurate or not, the Picatrix represents several common themes that were apparent in ancient times. Among these are the fascination with magical powers, especially as a way to explain that which was still rendered unexplainable by the limitations of the science of the day and the manipulation of the natural world to an individual's will. Despite the efficacy of the recipes within, the Picatrix is an invaluable tool for scholars seeking a greater understanding of the society of the day. Arbitel de Magia Vittarum. The Arabic culture is not the only one whose ancient ancestors left instructive magical texts for historians to puzzle over. The Arbitel de Magia Vittarum was a Latin book published in 1575 in Switzerland when publication and distribution of printed works was only just beginning to take off. Translated, the title becomes Arbitel on the Magic of Ancients, and scholars believe that it insinuates that the knowledge contained within the pages is from a divine or prophetic source. Although the book does deal with magic, its nature would have appealed to the people of the time, as it describes in a clear and uncomplicated manner the positive relationship between humanity and celestial hierarchies, and does not contain what would have been regarded as black magic by skeptics of the day. In fact, it frequently quotes the Bible as a source and advocates kindness, charity, and honesty in the user. However, it is not a religious text and is a straightforward grimoire that instructs the magus in spells and lifestyle, albeit a generally harmless one. Despite grimoires being relatively common for the age, the Arbitel de Magia Vittarum was groundbreaking in its approach to handling the matters of the world. It was one of the first works to use terms such as theosophy, anthroposophy, and theosophir as differentiators of knowledge sources both divine and human in nature. The simple, straightforward, and positive nature of this grimoire made it incredibly influential in its day, and it is still regarded as an invaluable historical document. However, due to the widespread Christian beliefs at the time, which thoroughly and completely vilified anything with a magical origin, the book was banned in many churches and learning institutions, and those who studied the grimoire despite this were frequently punished with expulsion. It did not help its popularity that several accused witches in the centuries following the publication attributed their spells to the Arbitel. Despite this, many continued to study the work, and several scholars viewed the book as more religious in nature, claiming the spells in question were not really spells but religious ceremonies that provided a vessel to speak to God. Because of its history and contents, the Arbitel de Magia Vittarum is still studied to this day, although now it is cited by historians with much more regularity than mages. Pseudomonarchia Daemonum. Some ancient occult texts are not so harmless in nature. The Pseudomonarchia Daemonum, or the False Monarchy of Demons, is an abridged grimoire that was first published as an appendix to the De Prestigiis Daemonum, a treatise on witchcraft written by Johann Weyer in 1563. This grimoire is more sinister and lists 69 demons and their respective hierarchies in the spirit world, as well as relevant procedures for conjuring each of them. The spirits were generally the same ones that appear to have been known to the populations of the day, as the list is very similar to other demonic texts such as the Lesser Key of Solomon, the Office of Spirits, and Ars Geta, all of which list nearly identical demons within their pages. They are referred to this appendix as the Book of the Offices of Spirits or the book called Mto Salomones concerning the princes and kings of the demons. However, the list was not invented by Vea and much of it was redacted by the author in an attempt to make the work potentially useless in actually summoning the demons within. However, it appears to be based on an earlier 15th century manuscript titled the Livda that lists much the same information as the Pseudomonarchia Daemonum. Additionally, the name of the work implies that the author did not prescribe to the idea of a darker spirit world and believed that the hierarchy in his text was false. Weyer intended the work to make fun of the idea of the demonic hierarchies included in his work, which were worshipped by witches at the time. A student of the occult, they spent much of his time attempting to protect those who were accused of practicing witchcraft, and claimed in the Pseudomonarchia that although demons and monsters from hell could have power over people, the ones to blame were the petty magicians who tricked others for money, not the witches whom he called the mentally ill. Despite these claims, the text goes on to describe the process of summoning demons and forcing them to do the summoner's bidding, as a witch not a petty magician would do. Ironically, rather than being insulted by the name and insinuations of the work, people across history instantly began using the document as a resource for their interactions with demons, and the false monarchy of demons became one of the most influential and infamous catalogues of the demons and their methods of summoning. It is considered a classic among demonology and has influenced the contents of grimoires for centuries, even more so than the previous work that it was based on. In fact, Sigmund Freud himself called the work one of the 10 most significant books of all time. Occasionally, a book written several centuries ago is influential enough that it remains relevant well into the present day, even if just a tool to study the society of long ago. These grimoires and books of magic have been instructing practitioners of the occult for centuries, and their function has shifted slightly so that they now instruct present-day scholars about the mysteries and beliefs of their time. Although these books are mysterious in themselves, full as they are of dark magic and potentially dangerous spells, they are an invaluable source of study for scholars of today. But what do you make of these mysterious books? Going back a few days ago, the Utah Highway Patrol uploaded a photo to social media showing a mysterious metallic-looking object protruding from the ground. It immediately went viral, with people giving their opinions on what they thought the object was and why it was placed there. However, the most recent information is that the monolith has now been stolen. The Bureau of Land Management said the following on Facebook: "Here is our official statement on the rumors surrounding the monolith. We have received credible reports that the illegally installed structure referred to as the monolith has now been removed from the Bureau of Land Management Public Lands by an unknown party. The BLM did not remove the structure, which is considered private property. We do not investigate crimes involving private property, which are handled by the local sheriff's office. The structure has received international and national attention, and we received reports that a person or group removed it on the evening of November 27th. This has caused outrage as many people were interested in what this structure was. It's also caused various theories to be put forward for why the structure was removed, with one person saying the following on Facebook: "It's strange how this massive monolith was erected on public land without anyone seeing who did it. The object has no scratches on it. Seems to be in mint condition and no one has claimed to be behind the creation. And then all of a sudden the object goes missing under mysterious circumstances. This whole discovery is just weird. I know people are joking about this being built by aliens, but why is there so much mystery around this object? Something is not adding up here." While another person on Facebook said the following: "I was there on the evening of the 27th. It must have been removed after sunset. We left an hour before sunset and there were still many people there." End quote. This person had this to say: "I know that when I visited the structure it was kind of eerie. It reminded me of something that could have been representing something. I guess someone just stole it. But I've also heard that officials didn't want people talking about it, and so removed it themselves. It's strange how we've had no answer for what this object is. I hope that whoever stole it gives it back. Many people want answers for what this is." End quote. Well, this person said the following: "I'm calling it right now that this monolith gets found, but that it actually gets switched. I guarantee that we'll never see the real one again, and that a fake one will show up that's just made of some random metal. This happens with most things of this nature. They mysteriously go missing and never turn up again. End quote. As of right now, various different theories have been spreading online for what this object is, and as of right now, we're no closer to identifying what this is and where it came from. There's many who believe that it was placed there as a joke. But as some have pointed out, this would have needed a lot of manpower in order to do this, and not only that, but to do it without getting seen by anyone. There's other theories that the structure was installed several years ago, and that it's only just been discovered. But as some have said, why would you go through all of the effort of installing it to only keep it a secret? Some think that it seems a bit far-fetched for it just to be a prank. Another person said the following: whoever wrote for this post is a little confusing. Why would they not investigate something that was taken from their land? Are they suggesting that the monolith was placed on public property? Something here is not adding up. I know that federal agencies do investigate and prosecute abandoning personal property on public land, constructing stuff on public land without a permit, and damaging natural features. So why are they turning a blind eye to this? I think there's more to this story than what a lot of people are letting on. End quote. Another person followed on from what this person said and had this to say: I don't get how you guys can say you're not going to investigate this. How does that make sense? Isn't this your job? You should be investigating this and pressing charges for whoever took this out of the ground. Also, I know that a lot of people were visiting this site over the last few days, so how did no one see someone removing this? Surely someone would have videoed people removing this if this was the case. Another question is, how did someone remove this out of the ground? This structure is very stable. I've seen photographs of people sitting on top of it. How does someone just go about stealing a monolith without being seen? There's still a lot of unanswered questions here. I really hope that the original structure does turn up somewhere, so tests can be carried out. End quote. As of right now, no one really knows what's going on in regards to this structure. There's people that think it was an art piece that was installed in the land without permission, while others think this could have been placed here by an ancient civilization. It seems though that we are further away from understanding what this object is, with some worrying that the original piece will never be discovered, and that if one does turn up, it will likely not be the original. So what do you make of the interesting monolith that's just been stolen? Do you think it was taken by some random person? Or do you believe the theory is that it was taken by a government agency to take some of the heat and publicity off? Also, how do you think that someone would be able to just turn up and steal this thing? After all, there's been so many people visiting the site in the last few days. Curse of the Pharaoh. On the 4th of November back in 1922, expert British archaeologists Howard Carter and famed financier 5th Earl of Carnarvon George Herbert unearthed the tomb of the pharaoh Tutankhamun himself and were filled with ecstasy to find it completely undisturbed and within a relatively pristine condition, uncommon to tombs normally unearthed throughout ancient Egyptian expedition sites during this time. As the archaeologists and their team entered the tomb, however, Howard Carter made note to a strange inscription commonly found on ancient tombs written in hieroglyphics that translated to say, "Cursed be those that disturb the rest of Pharaoh. That they shall break the seal of this tomb shall meet death by disease which no doctor can diagnose." Paying no heed to the warning, the archaeologists cleaned out the tomb and plundered the artifacts that remained. Within 5 months, the financier George Herbert would pass away from sepsis after a bite from a mosquito would become suddenly infected and cause severe blood poisoning. 5 months following the passing of George Herbert, his brother, Aubrey Herbert, would also pass away due to a sudden infection that brought about severe blood poisoning and the development of sepsis. Although the curse would see an end for the Herbert family, the curse would begin to affect the close friend of George Herbert, Sir Bruce Ingham, as Bruce Ingham had been gifted a number of Egyptian artifacts before George's passing. One of the artifacts was a paperweight that contained a mummified hand with a bracelet that bore the inscription saying, "Cursed be he who moves my body." Shortly after receiving this gift, Bruce Ingham's house would mysteriously burn down. During reconstruction efforts, the house was hit by a flood, preventing further construction from beginning in the area once again. Arizona Desert Purple Spheres. Back on the 27th of January in 2013, there were a number of strange reports made to an ABC affiliate news station known as KGUN9 that described thousands of small purple spheres out in the middle of the Vail Desert in the middle of the state of Arizona, southeast of Tucson. These purple spheres were described by a reporter as being similar to that of gooey marbles that would ooze out liquid substance shortly after the news station described the strange purple spheres and sent pictures out to the public. They soon thereafter received thousands of phone calls from fans of the news station, with the general consensus being that these purple spheres are, in fact, water-absorbing orbs that are used as children's toys that balloon up when water strikes them. They are described as being polymer pearls that are created out of super-absorbent polymers that can only be used to hydrate plants or prevent leaks of any kind. Interestingly enough, it appears that whoever had placed these absorbent polymers had placed several thousand bags worth of the spheres all throughout different patches of the desert, of which was an incredibly peculiar discovery given the fact that whoever placed the spheres had to have done it at least weeks prior to when they were discovered. Though some might argue that it could have been a prank from a social media personality, researchers found that the purple spheres were not discovered until the 27th of January, the following morning after a large rain for the region. This would mean that whoever placed the absorbent spheres merely left them dehydrated until the next rain would take place. This has left many to assume that it is more than possible that the spheres are being used to store water for the native flora in the region, and that whoever had placed the purple spheres could have done so in an attempt to sustain any native plant life in the region that otherwise would not survive during the dry desert seasons. Identity of the individual responsible is still unknown, and their motives can only be suspected to this day. The sulfur crack, often referred to by the government of Iceland's tourist marketing as a diver's paradise, the Silfur Fissure has become one of the most incredible discoveries in the world of diving since it was first measured. The fissure opened up as the North American and Eurasian tectonic plates began moving away from each other at a tremendous speed of roughly 2 centimeters per year. It is not this incredible tectonic movement that makes the Silfur Fissure an incredible discovery, however, but more about the perfect conditions of the fissure that allow the spot to be ideal for diving practices and accurate measurements of tectonic movement. The waters of the Silfur Fissure are regarded as the clearest waters in all the world, as the fissure is filled with a freshwater source from nearby melting glaciers that is filtered through roughly 50 kilometers of volcanic underground lava rock for more than 50 years and maintains optimal temperatures of roughly 2 to 4 degrees Celsius that keeps out native that would normally pollute the water from ever entering into the region, of which helps to keep the waters completely unpolluted. This allows divers and researchers to see directly down into the 42-meter deep fissure from the top of the water with an expected visibility of more than 100 meters. Given the fact that the fissure itself is accessible from land, it's the perfect spot for inexperienced divers to first attempt, which is perfect for geological researchers of whom are interested in getting into the world of diving for future underwater geological studies but have yet to get any experience. As the decades continue and the fissure deepens and widens further, the sulfur crack will prove to be a perfect example of nature wanting all of its secrets to be discovered in the most ideal conditions that could ever arise naturally. Namib Desert Fairy Circles, located in the Namib Desert, down near the northwestern Cape Province of South Africa. There appears to be a countless number of peculiar formations in the sand that have left researchers scrambling to try to find a reasonable explanation as to the course of the strange phenomena that appears almost artificial in nature. First recorded back in the 1920s, researchers began to notice that all throughout the Namib were arid grass formation circles that were evenly scattered across the entire land. These arid grass formations were shortly thereafter to be referred to as fairy circles due to the oral myths of the Himba people indigenous to the region that believed the strange spots of land where grass refused to grow was caused by their gods of whom stepped foot on the land, and the circles are evidence of their footprints. The true cause for the formation of the circles has been at the center of debates and controversy for roughly over a century, with researchers from all different backgrounds positing their own theories as to the formation of the fairy circles while also working to discredit the work of others given the strange nature of the circles. The first widely discussed theory surrounded the native species of termites after a researcher concluded that the circles were caused by termite nests inside the region digging small caverns to serve as miniature aquifers that would kill any grass above them. This theory was then disproven after the measuring of the circles showed that their formation was equidistant of each other, a behavior that the termites and newly formed termite nests would not have displayed over such vast distances. The second widely supported theory came as recent as 2013, when researchers found evidence as they found correlating evidence that fairy circles were centered at areas with poor soil nutrition and less precipitation. However, this find would not explain the perfect circle designs that came about from these competitive natures. Although some have argued an explanation that fits both answers, Others have noticed other strange causes of the arid formations and led to theories widely debated and deemed too controversial to support. Some researchers claim that the fairy circles have been measured to have heightened traces of radioactivity, but that their artificial formation might be evidence of deliberate radiation of some kind. Others have claimed that the fairy circles are evidence of far more supernatural origins and give credence to the native Bushmen in the region as to their rightful ownership of the land. To this day, no definitive answer has been accepted and no correlating evidence has been proven to be the causation of the fairy circles whatsoever. Loki's Castle discovery, referred to by researchers as Loki's Castle. A strange discovery was made back in the middle of July of 2008 of a field of highly active hydrothermal vents located between Greenland and Norway in a relatively stable region of the Earth's crust that normally shouldn't have such highly active hydrothermal fields. The site was located by a team of 25 research scientists who claim that the field sits on an 825 feet in diameter, making it the largest sulfide material deposit ever discovered. The field itself is made of 5 large black chimneys of vents that are covered in an exotic form of microorganism white in color, and was named Loki's Castle for its strange similarities to that of the design of fantasy castles often depicted for Scandinavian mythology. The discovery of a number of unique vent species previously undiscovered had been made in the region that researchers believe only exist in this field alone and nowhere else, given their oddly specific adaptations to the surrounding environment. Unfortunately, given its relatively recent discovery and its difficult location for future expeditions and ease of study, not much else is known about this strange underwater discovery. The human body is nothing short of complex, with hundreds of bones, muscles, tissue, etc. Doctors and other scientific experts are continually learning about the human form and how it functions. Recent research has uncovered unusual evidence surrounding mysterious skulls from the past, looking at the rare deformities in order to draw upon conclusions. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 puzzling and mysterious new evidence about the Paracas skulls. The first skull we're discussing is the new evidence surrounding elongated Paracas skulls. These skulls were first discovered in the Paracas region of Peru, a desert on the south coast of the country. Julio Tello, a Peruvian archaeologist, was the first to discover these astonishing skulls in 1928. What initially stood out as the most unusual among the skulls was that they were the longest and most protracted skulls to have ever been seen before. Over 300 were found, dating back to between 2,000 and 3,000 years old. It wasn't until 2014 when preliminary DNA testing revealed unusual findings. It showed that they have mitochondrial DNA with strange mutations that has not been seen in animals or humans before. The elongated skulls were just the tip of the iceberg. While skulls may become elongated due to deformities or applying force on the skull for a long period of time, this was certainly not the case with the Paracas skulls. A researcher by the name of Lamazzuli took note of more than a few characteristics that don't fit the norm for a standard human skull. The eye sockets were found to be much larger, the cheekbones were much more pronounced, and the skulls weighed 60% more than that of a normal human skull. He also looked to a specific point of the skull known as the foramen magnum. On a human skull, it's situated closer to the jawline, whereas it was closer to the back of the skull on the Paracas ones. After studying over 1,000 skulls, archaeologists also noted that the foramen magnum was smaller, leading to them to theorize that it's a genetic trait. This led to further research and discovery of the Paracas skulls, investigating every part. In great detail, experts eventually noticed that they were missing a sagittal suture, which is found on all human skulls and is a piece of tissue that connects the 2 parietal bones in the skull. Although not all Paracas skulls were devoid of a sagittal suture, most didn't appear to have one at all. This brought upon more confusion and intrigue to those involved in the research. As research continued, 3 skulls were used to sample DNA, one of which was an infant dating back 800 to 2,000 years ago. Hair and bone powder were extracted from the foramen magnum whilst wearing protective clothing to ensure the samples wouldn't be contaminated. The samples were sent to 3 different labs in Canada and the United States, and the geneticists weren't given many details to reduce the risk of creating preconceived notions about the skulls. The DNA results were nothing short of fascinating. They came back explaining that one of the samples found that the hair samples weren't a sequence found in human DNA. However, the other samples were showing they come mostly from Eastern Europe and some from Western Europe, When looking at the bone powder, they found that it originated from Mesopotamia, otherwise known as Syria. So what does this information mean? Essentially, it tells us that human migration was more complex than what we previously thought. It also points to the possibility that people from Europe and the Middle East made their way to the Americas a lot sooner than we had previously held true. It may still take many years before experts are able to provide an adequate explanation for the unusual findings among the Paracas skulls. So we'll have to draw our own conclusions for now. Who knows, maybe this discovery will bring about more news and provide us with the insight needed to better understand the human race and our untraceable history. Russian archaeologists find elongated skull with perfect teeth. The next discovery involves elongated skulls similar to the Paracas skulls. Only this time the findings were even more unnerving. A female skeleton was found with an astonishing set of teeth that had been preserved for between 1700 and 2000 years. This skeleton was found in Russia at a 4,000-year-old site, Arcane, that is often referred to as Russia's Stonehenge. The site is home to the remains of a structure, and it has become a hotspot for psychics, clairvoyants, and more. Before discovering the skull at Arcane, many visitors had unusual experiences there, describing hallucinations and strange anomalies. People have even claimed to see UFOs at the site, bringing others along in hopes that they could see UFOs as well. Since purposely elongating skulls is a practice from the past, by using force or a wrap to mold a child or baby's head, finding an elongated skull isn't all that mysterious. Many have tried to claim the skulls are from aliens, due to their unique look, but researchers know this to be false. With that being said, no one is quite sure why cranial deformation was practiced thousands of years ago. Some potential theories consist of using it for men to look more or perhaps to distinguish between a higher social class. Elongated skulls are found in many ancient civilizations, but it still does not provide an answer for how a full set of teeth was preserved over that many years. When trying to determine if the skeleton was from the original Archaean civilization, they used radiocarbon dating and found it came from a significantly earlier time. The woman was believed to have come from a tribe known as the Sarmatians, but there isn't enough evidence to prove that this is correct at the moment. It's almost impossible to believe that her teeth could stay intact for such a long period without modern methods of preservation. Do you think it's possible that the woman's teeth could have stayed preserved for nearly 2,000 years? At this time, we don't have the full story behind the teeth, and we may never know how it could be conceivable. All we can do for now is play with the existing theories as experts work to unravel the mystery. Skull anomalies. The Sealand skull. The final skull anomaly we're going to discuss is what is commonly known as the Sealand skull. This is by far the most controversial skull that has been discovered recently. Found in 2007 in Denmark by workers who were fixing pipes in sewers, the Sealand skull has continued to haunt many. By 2010, it was examined for the first time by the College of Veterinary Medicine in Denmark. Researchers and experts alike were perplexed by the skull and unable to determine what species it was. Many features differ greatly to that of a human skull, with large and differently spaced eye sockets, a smaller nose, and a smaller jaw. It was originally assumed to belong to a horse, but further research proved that could not have been the case. Further research was completed and revealed that the skull dates back to somewhere between at 1280 BC. Experts had trouble connecting the skull to other objects near where it was found and started to look more closely at its features for answers. It's much larger than a typical male human head, and the unusual eye sockets suggest that the creature proposes it may have been nocturnal. Some hypothesized that it could be from an alien that lived on Earth, which is not the most believable. Other experts have guessed that it was from a forgotten species of humans, given how far it dates back in history. Maybe these unusual features seem strange in comparison to modern human form, but it could have been normal thousands of years ago. Whilst that may be a perfectly legitimate answer to the question of what species the skull belongs to, not everyone is convinced. The village it was found in and nearby villages are said to be very mysterious and believe that it isn't a human skull. Where do you stand on the argument? Do you think that the skull is from a long-standing human species that once existed and we're only now discovering? Or is it perhaps from an extraterrestrial being that lived on our planet? Maybe it was neither, but this is one mystery where we probably won't ever be able to crack the code. Are there more mysterious skulls to discover in the future? After diving into the phenomenal world of skull anomalies, it's clear we still don't know enough about humanity and the people. The past. These discoveries still remain a mystery, and we're working towards answers, but no one can say when those will come. While we've made strides in our recent discoveries, who's to say that they won't raise further questions? We've never known more than we do at this point in time as science continues to progress, so it's likely that in time we'll be much further ahead. But what do you make of these mysterious and puzzling skulls? Richard III's DNA raises questions over Queen's ancestry. Following the discovery of his remains more than 500 years after his death, scientists discovered that King Richard III's DNA shows evidence of illegitimacy in the British royal family ancestry. Since the news first broke out in 2012, the same staggering question continues to boggle the minds of many up to this day. Is Queen Elizabeth II the rightful heir to the throne? King Richard III lived in the 15th century. His reign was rather short as it only lasted for 2 years due to his sudden death in the hands of his enemies at the Battle of Bosworth. The iconic ruler is known to be the last king of England to die in a battle that marked the end of the Plantagenet era and paved the way for the Tudor period. His reputation speaks both of his good and bad sides. Some say that he was a great ruler who wanted to make life fairer and more bearable for ordinary people. On the flip side, others say that he was so despicable that he murdered his nephews to protect his throne. Regardless of which account is accurate, scientists who studied his life believe one thing to be true, that the human remains unearthed under a car park in downtown Leicester back in 2012 is indeed King Richard III. This confirmation is the foundation of a huge controversy surrounding the reigning royal family's claim to the throne. A team of DNA experts and genealogists from Leicester University studied the remains of Richard III. Since he did not have a successor, they compared DNA samples with his sister Anna of York's living descendants. While King Richard III's DNA matched with his female ancestors, it was not a match with the males. There appears to be a break in the family tree. This means that somewhere along the lineage, a royal wife cuckolded a king and gave birth to another man's child. Scientists could not say for sure at this time. This did not come as a surprise to a lot of genealogists, though, as they are well aware of the constant 1% to 2% chance of false paternity. There is also the possibility that there is more than one break in the lineage or that more than one royal wife kept a secret. Queen Elizabeth II is a descendant of King Henry VII, who is one of the 5 Tudor monarchs. If the break in the lineage occurred between John of Gaunt and his father Edward III, who both lived in the early 14th century, then the Tudors' claim to the throne might be illegitimate. According to Professor Kevin Scheuer of Leicester University, given the passage of time since this probably medieval royal scandal happened, the reigning queen is safe and her claim to the throne should not be questioned. Almost a decade after this discovery, the queen remains unshaken. By far, no controversy or theory has succeeded in dethroning the royal family, and the living descendants of the House of Tudor continue to reign. The mystery of the nonsense hieroglyphics. For decades, a group of Polish archaeologists have been working to excavate the Saqqara necropolis, or City of the Dead. This necropolis was in the ancient capital of Memphis. Inside is filled with ornate tombs, obvious that this particular necropolis was reserved for royalty. Nearby, in a dig taking place in September of 2018, Egyptologist Kamil Koroskovitz and his team were working in an area between the Pyramid of Djoser, the oldest pyramid in the world, and the dry moat, a long rectangular ditch surrounding the pyramid. It was here they discovered something out of the ordinary. When tombs of royalty or other important people are uncovered, they are often filled with grave goods, symbolizing their importance. Some are even labeled with hieroglyphics. Modern hieroglyphics have been around since roughly the 32nd century BC, with the first full sentence appearing in the 28th century BC. The written language consists of over 1,000 distinct characters. With this ancient language unlocked, researchers can decipher all kinds of things about the tombs they decorate, including who they belong to. That was until the dig near the Pyramid of Djoser. Here the team found roughly 500 simple burials. These burials were simple and in no way as neatly done as those of the royals. One could even call them clumsy. It is thought that this could have been a burial site for the working or middle-class people. The team went on to say that the embalming was very basic and the bodies were placed directly into pits in the sand or into now much decayed wooden coffins. Although the coffins had much damage and were often found empty from looters, one coffin remained intact enough for the team to study. On the lid, where the name of the deceased would often go, were what is best to be referred to as imitation hieroglyphics. They didn't make one bit of sense. The researchers believed that possibly the painter was illiterate and simply tried to recreate glyphs they had seen before. Furthermore, figures of Anubis, guardian of the underworld, were painted in blue instead of his usual black. They described the coffin as beautifully clumsy. Some believe that although the burials are simple and nowhere near the grandeur of the royal, that everyday people still practice the same funeral practices, or even that the funerals of the royal were mimicked without pure understanding. As we have come to learn, the mummification and burial process held great religious beliefs in the Egyptian culture. Great tombs and burials aimed at supplying a glorious afterlife. Maybe this was just one person's go at giving their loved one a chance at having one as well. The Behistun inscription found at a large rock relief on a cliff located at Mount Behistun, a name of which roughly translates to the Old Persian saying that means the place of God, was an ancient multilingual inscription carved into the rock face that changed the understanding of these ancient civilizations for research archaeologists and expert historians from around the world. Serving a purpose similar to that of the Rosetta Stone, the inscription located on the rock face in the Kermanshah province of Iran helped researchers to decipher the ancient Sunniform script that had often been found in archaeological expeditions all throughout the region. The Behistun inscription had included 3 versions of the same text, all written in 3 different Sunniform script languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, which was a variety of the ancient Akkadian written language. Interestingly enough, the inscriptions on the side of the limestone cliff face told stories of ancient gods that seemed to fit with the theories of those of the ancient alien community. And back in 1938, the inscription had become popular amongst Nazi researchers looking into the matter and had become of focused interest to the Nazi German think tank in Annerby. Not only did this inscription allow researchers to understand long-forgotten languages and decipher more complex pieces, but it allowed experts to understand the ancient mythologies of the people that helped to completely change the historical timeline of civilization in the region and the advancements made by our ancestors. With the onset of World War II, the Nazi German think tank were unable to put further research into the area and would not be revisited until roughly 10 years later in the year 1948 by an American linguist of whom never truly explained the purpose of his expedition in the region. Given the fascination that the Nazi regime and Adolf Hitler had with ancient civilizations, long-forgotten technologies, and the mysteries of the occult, many speculate that this Behistun into that of the ancient civilizations of the region, and that perhaps the American linguist was focused on better understanding this Nazi fascination. Iwona Wizerek. It was the 17th of July 2010 in Spot, Poland. In the early morning light, 19-year-old Iwona Wizerek makes a final call to her friend, Audria. Earlier that night, the girls were out celebrating their completion of high school, attending a party not far from their home. Audria convinced Iwona to leave and continue their partying at a nearby nightclub, Dream Club. They arrived at the club, along with 3 of Audria's male friends, Paul, Adrian, and Mark. After an argument with the men, Yvonne stormed out determined to walk the almost 4 miles home. Texts from her phone indicate she was angry her friend did not follow her out of the club after the argument. There were several calls made to Audria. The last one occurred at around 4 a.m., in which Audria had apologized for the incident at the club. Ivona confessed she wasn't in a state to be seen at home, still drunk from all the partying. Audria informed Ivona she would leave her keys outside of her apartment if she wanted to come to stay with her. CCTV easily tracked Ivona's path, having been seen on several different cameras. Barefoot and alone, she headed towards the neighborhood that she and Audria lived in. Needless to say, Ivona never arrived. After awakening and finding her keys where she had left them, Audria contacted Ivona's family to check that she had made it home. Although she was reported missing, authorities claimed Ivona was capable enough to make it home and could have stayed at another friend's house. It was a week before the disappearance of Ivona was taken seriously. During the last few seconds of the video captured of Ivona, a man was seen walking behind her. He was possibly the last known person to see her alive. Even though his picture and sketches were widely circulated, no one ever stepped forward claiming to be the man, and he was never identified. In 2014, Audrey and one of the men from the club were interviewed regarding the disappearance. Although both of them corroborated the time Ona left the club, neither of them could maintain eye contact with the camera. And though they seemed to remember the time of her leaving, not one of them could remember what the argument was about. This strange behavior has led some to believe that perhaps Audrey and the men know more about her disappearance than they were telling. In Poland, Iwona's disappearance has not faded away. Some 12,000 pages on a forum remain active searching for Iwona, sharing pictures of her and asking for someone to step forward. Some fear she has been sold into human trafficking. Even with hundreds of people from the area interviewed, no sign of Iwona has ever turned. Lars Mittank's last minutes may be captured in the most popular YouTube video featuring a missing person. Mittank's story begins in Golden Sands, Bulgaria on July 6, 2014. He had spent the week vacationing at the seaside resort with a group of friends. On this day, after arguing over soccer, Mittank got into an altercation with 4 men, resulting in a ruptured eardrum and possible concussion. Due to the injury, a doctor advised him not to fly and prescribed him the antibiotic cefuroxime before referring him to a hospital. Although his friends said they would stay with him, Mittank insisted that he was fine and they could return home without him. A friend later stated he seemed to be in a good mood when they left. His friends went on their way and Mittank checked himself into a cheap hotel called Hotel Color. He was only on his own a day before his strange behavior was captured on the hotel's security cameras. The footage revealed him pacing the halls and hiding in an elevator. He quickly became paranoid and in a panicked call home to his mother, he whispered that 4 men were coming to kill him. He then advised her to cancel his credit cards. CCTV last captured Mittank in Varna airport. The video shows him entering the airport with his luggage before walking out of sight. Mittank is seen again, leaving his luggage behind. He is seen sprinting through the airport as if he is running for his life. He pushes through the doors of the airport and continues to run through the parking lot. The last shots of Mittank show him scaling a fence close to a wooded area. Airport Dr. Kostya Koskov later described Mittank as nervous and erratic. He claimed Mittank began to tremble when seeing a construction worker and was noted saying, "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here." His belongings, including a backpack and suitcase, were later recovered at the airport. Its contents revealed nothing about his disappearance, however. Mittank was never seen again. Language. It's a force of communication that has advanced our species forward, past our primitive stage. Throughout history, humans have created extraordinary works of literature, from paintings on cave walls to complex stories and novels. The way in which we communicate is elaborate and efficient. It should be no surprise that, throughout the centuries, there have been forbidden, dark, and sometimes even cursed scriptures written on the parchments of ancient manuscripts. So today, we'll be taking a look at 3 ancient books that have caused mystery and interest. The Greek Magical Papyri. The Greek Magical Papyri, or PGM, is a body of papyri dating back to the Greco-Roman Egypt. It's written mostly in ancient Greek, however other languages are included in the text, such as Egyptian Demotic. Physical analysis of the pages has shown that the materials used to create it can be dated back between 100 BCE to the 400 CE. The contents of the scripture contain ancient hymns, instructions for complex rituals, formulae, and many mysterious spells. The PGM wasn't created in its entirety, instead was slowly added to over the passage of time. This has sparked argumentative debates over the nature of the manuscript's production throughout the years. H.D. Betts, an English translator of the PGM, has suggested that the magical aspects of were authentically written in the ancient Greco-Roman times, and that the book itself is forbidden knowledge, underground literature so to speak, hidden from plain sight to protect it from the mass book burnings of the time. Evidence of book burnings occurring at this period in history do exist, such as when Emperor Augustus ordered for all magical books to be burned and destroyed, though it's speculated that these books were specifically early Christian texts. Scholar Frankfurter argued that these texts were written by innovative members of the Egyptian priesthood during the 3rd or 4th century decline of the Egyptian temple infrastructure, therefore were not forbidden texts. The PGM was discovered once again sometime in the 18th century. This was during an antiquities trade, and from that point onwards news and rumors of this elusive text spread through contemporary scholarly circles. It was only during the early 19th century that the very first volume was sold at an art market in Egypt. The next known volume of the text was bought by a French diplomat. A large section of the PGM are commonly known as the Anastasi collection. This is due to the fact that at least half a dozen of the texts were owned by Jean de Anastasi. He explains that he got them in Egypt. He sold the text to European collectors of his time, the volume spreading out across the world, all the way to the British Museum and to other various public and private collectors alike. H.D. Betts, the English translator, explained the texts were likely in the possession of some ancient scholar who resided in Egypt, and Anastasi came across them, as well as other antiquities of significance, and took them to sell them for profit. What's known as the Thebes cache held within it besides the PGM, the Stockholm Papyrus, and the Leiden Papyrus X, which contained alchemical scriptures. Though the introductory segments are Greco-Roman Egyptian in nature, there are other sections which suggest they were produced solely in Greece. Hellenic deities such as Zeus, Artemis, Aphrodite, and Apollo aren't depicted as divine beings to be worshipped, but instead as dangerous demonic entities. The text tangles Hellenic, Jewish, and Egyptian beliefs together, though the origins for this are far from clear. Though the text materials and language of origin is Greco-Roman, the actual religious content seems to be more Greco-Egyptian. After reviewing and analyzing the PGM, Pauline Hainsworth, a professor at the SRUC, decided that the manuscript held practical uses, as well as intellectual ones. Once put together in a cohesive order, the PGM seems to be a guide for magicians, wise women, and magic users. Spells, arcane knowledge, secrets of the ancient gods, formulae, and even what appears to be a guide for magicians on the go are all included within the sacred pages. The rituals included are both light and dark, from summoning demons and deities to simple folk remedies. The PGM had it all. It's uncertain who started this series of mystical writings, or who contributed to it over time. What is known is this book had a considerable number of unnamed authors who possessed hidden knowledge they wished to share. The text was passed down from generation to generation, concealed from the gaze of common people who were not meant to lay their eyes upon it. The Ars Almadiel is part of what is known as the Lesser Key of Solomon, or the Solomonus Regius. This is a grimoire dedicated to the art of demonology, whose authors are lost to the sand of time, anonymous or forgotten. The spellbook was produced in the mid-17th century. However, the information and material inside the pages can be traced back to several centuries prior. This mysterious spellbook is split into 5 separate sections, the Ars Almadiel being one. The grimoire has been copied and edited by several notable individuals throughout the decades. One of the sections, the Ars Goetia, may have been written first. It features content about advanced demonology, much of which can be traced back to the 16th and 17th century. A man named Thomas Rudd wrote about various types of demons, as well as about 72 angels in the 1500s. His works were likely used when the novel was composed, though the names and seals of individual angels were likely the work of someone else, whose works were referenced by Samuel Mathers in his own text about the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Samuel Mathers went on to partly translate the spellbook in the 19th century, and included edited invocations which were unrelated to the original scripture, inserting its own information, some of which is now considered to have been fabricated with no concrete evidence and is scrutinized in modern occult communities. The Ars Almadiel, however, has its authors and inspirations unknown. It is considered to be of Arabic origin. It's speculated that a man by the name of Robert H. Turner possessed a copy in the 15th in the early 20th century. Several translated versions in Hebrew were discovered, but who specifically wrote it remains a mystery. The Ars Almadiel is an instruction manual of sorts. It describes the process of the creation of wax and tablets with various designs meant to invoke angels with divination. Furthermore, the Almadiel is a portable altar meant to summon divine and demonic beings. If instructions are followed properly, and one creates a ritualistic space which is exorcised and fumigated for a week. All spirits who are summoned are said to obey the summoner. The Galdrbach, literally meaning the Book of Magic in Icelandic, is a grimoire that's been dated back to the year 1600. The book is considerably small compared to other spellbooks of the time, and contains a compilation of 47 spells, sigils, and staves. It has 4 known creators from the 16th to 17th century. The first 3 scribes were of Icelandic descent, but the 4th was a Dane. The spells and writings inserted are mainly written in Latic and runic alphabets, including Icelandic magical staves. Included in the book are invocations to entities of the Christian faith, demons, and pagan deities. There are even herbal recipes and spells of all varieties, from protective charms against evil, to spells meant to induce rage, to spells that are supposed to enchant women. It was officially published within the last century. In 1921, the publisher translated it to Swedish during the 1920s, but the first English translation was only released in 1989 by Stephen Flowers. It's believed the first magician began the work and wrote down anywhere from 1 to 10 spells. Afterwards, it was passed down to another Icelander who added more spells and so on, until the third writer, Linner, chose to include an index of references to old Germanic deities in immaculate detail. Then the book was shipped to Denmark, where a Danish magician added his share of the spells. The Galdrbach is often overlooked, but it's a crucial part of history. Unlike most sources, the Icelandic spellbook reveals more to us about the belief in and view of magic during the late Middle Ages than the majority of references from this time, and it does so very clearly. It's no secret that our ancestors believed wholeheartedly in magic. It's a concept that existed since the beginning of time. Whether or not magic is real is a debate, though a plethora of spellbooks and grimoires are out there in the wide world just waiting to be discovered. Who knows how many more mysterious books we'll find in the future? And more importantly, who knows what light they'll shed on our past? It's perfectly plausible that we may someday uncover something unthinkable, something that will alter the way we view history itself. So what do you make of these mysterious ancient books?